Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Fandom Report. I'm here with the lovely JensenAvenger, aka Jensen from TikTok. And thank you so much for joining us on this episode today. I'm really excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat all things nerdy. I'm super excited.
No, literally, when I was like, kind of planning out who I wanted to invite onto the show, I was like, I gotta get her on at least once for Hawkeye because I know,
Oh, I
and we'll talk
appreciate
about
it.
this too. Like, I know just how much you love Kate Bishop and like the Hawkeye
It's
comics and
true.
everything. So it's like I need to get her perspective on everything that's happened. And it just worked out perfectly that you're here to kind of, talk to us about the entire show, not just the last two episodes, but like the kind of the
Yes,
whole show in general. So yeah, super
definitely. I'm
jazzed.
super excited.
So for those of you watching slash listening, major spoilers for Hawkeye if you haven't seen it. And I'll just throw in a potential spoiler alert for Spider-Man No Way Home, just in case that comes into conversation. It might, just covering our bases. But yeah, definitely don't watch or listen if you're not caught up, let's just say on all of phase 4 so far of Marvel. So tell me, I guess kind of where to start is when they first announced that they were going to do the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus, like what was your reaction? What like kind of worries did you have, if any? Like, can you just talk to us a little bit like your initial like feelings going into the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've definitely been one who has been defending Hawkeye for years, I feel like, in the MCU because I was a comic book fan. I feel like at some point your love of a comic character does influence your love when they start coming into films, even if they aren't necessarily represented in the way that you would have chosen for them to be represented. Obviously, Clint has been controversial, to say the
Mm-hmm.
least, over the past 11 years now that we've been doing the MCU. But it was always something that I was like, no, but like, guys, come on, I promise he's so much cooler. Like, so especially when Endgame came out and he was kind of presented to be the survivor through him and Black Widow, it
Mm-hmm.
was obviously fans were not thrilled.
Yeah.
And I was in my
That's one way
like
to put it.
lonely. Yeah. uh, it was controversial to say the least.
Yes.
And as someone who loves both Black Widow and Hawkeye, it was really hard to be like, I know how annoying this probably sounds, but at that point we had known that the Hawkeye show was coming out. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
they've got to like redeem him. Like this has got to be like we're gonna get good Clint. And I was so excited for that because I genuinely believed that Natasha's story had wrapped up in the MCU, or at least the MCU shouldn't touch it any further, given what they had presented to us in the past. So once Hawkeye was coming out, I was really like on that train of defending him and being like, no, I promise you guys. So I think that was my biggest fear, at least, was that people weren't going to give him the chance for that story to be told. And obviously I had hoped that there was going to be a lot of those influences from the Matt Fraction run. And it pretty much just delivered anything I could have asked for.
Yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying. I was one of the people, although I feel for different reasons, but I was definitely one of the people who was like kind of annoyed that it was like Hawkeye instead of Black Widow. And my reasonings were more just about like the justification as why they chose Hawkeye instead of Black Widow.
Yeah,
Like that
and
was more
given like the
than,
past of the MCU, I completely understand why people were
yeah.
aggravated. Like the MCU had set it up for you to care more about Natasha.
Yeah. Which is like
Like,
also like, of course, so then that way that scene is more impactful. Like, like
sure.
nobody's really gonna cry, at least back when Endgame came out. Like there weren't gonna be a
Right.
lot of fans crying over Clint dying instead of Natasha. And similarly, I like the Matt Fraction comic was like the first comic book that I ever got. Like that
A
Hawkeye run was like
great
the
one to
first
start
one.
with.
And it was so good. And that was like the Hawkeye that I had been waiting for and kind of expecting. And still, as
Yeah.
Marvel continued, just I'm like, I'm still waiting. Like
Mm-hmm.
when he first shows up in Thor, like I was like, okay, I like this guy. Like, when he's like, you better call it because I'm starting to root for him. Like his whole like just attitude towards everything. I was like, I like this guy. And then he didn't really get a chance to shine in Avengers. Like he spends the majority of the movie brainwashed, and then
Yeah.
it sucked. But definitely now that they have presented him and Kate Bishop, you know, in the Matt Fraction lens, I'm like, okay, so on board. Like I take back like all the bad things. I still, you know, he's not the Hawkeye that I love in those other projects, but if this is who he
Sure.
is moving forward, like 100% I am
Can
behind
get
him.
behind.
Like
Yep.
this is comic Clint that we've been waiting for in the MCU.
Yeah, absolutely. I still haven't forgiven the MCU for the past 10 years and what they have done to Clint Barton, but
Yeah.
they're on the right path now, and I'm happy.
Yes. Yes. It's the MCU's redemption story.
Exactly. Phase 4 for the MCU has been like, we're gonna fix some stuff.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. So I have to ask too, because and I've seen you kind of posting things on Instagram and Twitter as well, like how I know some people were kind of like, what do you mean that Spider-Man like wasn't your favorite project so far? And and what you said, you're like, you guys see who I have as like my profile picture? It's Kate Bishop. And I'm like, yeah, that like makes sense. So Kate, like, can you talk to us a little more about like your love for Kate Bishop and like how that started and like how you feel she was presented in the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into Kate pretty late given the Hawkeye context. I got into her around last year because all of those like developments for like the Young Avengers were kind of like starting, and you're like, all
Mhm.
right, well, I was like, I'm gonna start reading this. It was something that had been on like my TBR for a really long time. So I was like, all right, we're just committing. And then it just went like whoop down the rabbit hole. It was kind of one of those things where like it was like a group of us that had kind of started reading it. Like me and a couple friends were gonna cosplay the Young Avengers, and they were like, Jensen, you're Kate. Like there's like no question. And I was like, all right, well, I should probably like read it. And then once I did, it was just kind of, I call it like love at first read. I got addicted. I went through Marvel Unlimited and basically just searched her name and went step by step down every single comic that she's appeared in, and I just fell in love with her. I think that I keep saying that I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I started on TikTok very Spider-Man heavy. It's kind of what got me to where I am now. So looking at Kate Bishop's origin story, it really reminds me a lot of Black Cats, weirdly.
Okay.
And we see that kind of in Young Avengers Presents Kate Bishop. They kind of did a Young Avengers Presents and went through each character, and the Kate Bishop one like has like her backstory. And I find that like with in the comics, her dad is like a kind of a crime boss, and then she has trigger warning for sexual assault. And she definitely just kind of went the other way of Black Cat. And I love that. Like her and her like the privilege that she had growing up, and just kind of how she took what happened and everything that has happened, and applied that to being a superhero with no powers, just made me fall in love with her.
No, that, yeah, I mean, definitely. It's interesting what you just said, like her and Black Cat having like very similar origin stories, but going different paths. It kind of makes me think of
Yeah.
that phrase, like two sides of like the same coin.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah. And it's also just thinking about, you know, like when you're presented, like, you know, with these obstacles and these hardships in life and like the decisions you make with them, it makes me think, you know, going back to the show Eleanor, who's Kate Bishop's mom in the show, you know, when she was faced with these challenges, you know, she made some not so great decisions. And, you know, part of it is because, you know, we can't, how do you say no to somebody like Kingpin?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever watched Arrow on the CW, if you like have
I
any.
haven't. I know Green
Okay.
Arrow from the comics, but not
Yeah.
on the CW.
Okay. Because from like the get-go, Eleanor just reminded me so much of Moira Queen, Oliver Queen's mom in the show. And it like had it was like just very similar storylines that came out. So that was just something that I found like very funny, I guess, like, you know, two
Right.
shows about an archer hero and their moms turn out to be part of like the whole evil underground crime ring or
Like, is
whatever.
this a
But
trend? What's going on here?
I guess so. I guess so. But I mean, just thinking about too, like that the decision that Kate has to make at the end, you know, with, you know, sending her mom to
Brutal.
jail and like the whole, I feel like the whole show, like a huge theme for Kate was like, you know, yes, you know, you see being a superhero as, you know, being fun and like adventurous, but at the end of the day, it's like you do have to make a lot of hard calls. And I feel like that was like a great like moment for her that we see like she actually fully accepts the reality of what it means to be, you know, a superhero.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you see her talk about so much like the costumes and like how cool it is and trick arrows and all these
Mhm.
cool things, but to actually have to see her like make those hard decisions. And I think that was something for Clint, was that she saw him as such a hero. And he's like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, this job is terrible
Yeah.
most of the time. Like,
Mhm.
the balance is not there. It's like
Yeah.
90-10.
Yeah.
So to be able for her to kind of accomplish that in what felt like such a short amount of time
Mhm.
is crazy. Because when you think about the show, I mean, it happens over a span of like 3-4 days,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's a lot to be thrown on her in just a few days. But she is so quick to adapt and make those right decisions. It was crazy cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I appreciate how Marvel was able to, because like you said, it only took place in like less than a week, how they were
Mhm.
able to like, develop these two characters and their relationship and have them grow in such different ways. And it doesn't feel rushed at all.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so funny to me how we had like 10 years with Clint and Nat, and I believe now having seen Hawkeye and Black Widow, I believe their friendship a lot more, but they've given us a 6 episode series, and I believe Kate and Clint's friendship so instantly.
yes, yes. I mean, even looking at Kate and Yelena, like half the time
Yeah,
they're like fighting, and I'm like, I feel like these two have such a stronger friendship than anything we ever saw on screen for Natasha and Clint in the last 10 years or so.
exactly. I'm like, how did you guys have all this time? You can do it. Where did what
Yeah.
happened?
What happened? No, it's so true. And I feel like that's something, kind of in general for like Marvel Phase 4, like they're getting a lot better at like, telling stories, like developing characters in a quicker way that's still believable. And I know part of that has to do with like the whole television setup that they're like embracing now, as
Yeah,
opposed to just movies over the course of, we used to get like 3 new stories every year. Now it's like, practically a new story once a week, which is like still insane to me.
this year in general for Marvel, I've just been like, whew, I need a breather.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Need
mean,
a
give
little
me
break.
more, but
Yes.
also
Yes.
maybe
No.
our time it drops at 3 a.m.
Yes.
So kind of
Yeah.
great not to have to stay up till 3 a.m., but also give me more.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, like, and I think in terms of like, giving us more, I feel like a Hawkeye season 2, like I feel like, come on, Marvel. I feel like it's so obvious. Like
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't know what your feelings are about the Loki series. Were you like kind of, did you like it? Did you not like it?
I won't say that I disliked it by like
Hmm.
any means. I
Hmm.
don't think that there has been a project this year that I didn't like.
Okay.
Um, I don't think there's been an MCU project in general that I didn't like. But
Hmm.
I definitely think it's probably the weakest
Yes.
of the at least the live action material that we've gotten so far in
Hmm.
phase 4. Obviously with the Loki representation just completely being butchered.
Yeah.
Um, given gender fluidity and bi representation, but also just in general, I've actually thought pretty much up until Hawkeye that the series finales for me have been very weak.
Hmm.
Um, so that's kind of my feelings on Loki. It kind of ties
Yeah.
into that. Was I was like, oh, season finale, okay, cool. That
Yeah.
ended.
Well, no, because the thing that kind of surprised me about Loki was the fact that like immediately they were like Loki season 2. And I'm
Yeah,
like, okay,
absolutely.
I feel like this is definitely more of a like, we still want to use the TVA to tell more of a story rather than like the fans really like this and let's give them more of it.
Yeah, it felt more like a Loki will return moment or a
Hmm.
TVA will return.
Yeah.
Sylvie will return, whatever it was, which is, I
Mhm.
think, what's so funny to me about everybody freaking out about the post credit scene for Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Because that's like the least of my problems. I was waiting for like the Hawkeyes will return, like
Yes.
something,
Yeah.
but no, they give us nothing, which I like have a love hate relationship with.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've been wanting more of Rogers the Musical. I
That's
mean,
what I'm saying. I'm like, they gave us
it's like,
exactly what we
yeah,
wanted.
we've
And I
been
love how
asking
they
for it.
presented it too. They were like, from us to you,
Yes.
you
Like
can have
happy
this. And I was like,
holidays. Yes.
I appreciate it, Marvel. Thank
Yes.
you. You listened.
Yes. No, it's so true. And I feel like also like kind of going what we were just saying, like, it's been a lot of Marvel this year. Like I'm by no means complaining, but I feel like not giving us like a real quote unquote after credit scene is not bad, because then it gives us time to like process everything and like just kind
Absolutely.
of, let go of the tension, and there's still so much, like even with just like the multiverse of madness
Oh,
teaser, there's still so much
absolutely.
to discuss.
And it's not like in Hawkeye there weren't things that were being built up to. Like I
Yes.
almost feel like it didn't need it
Mhm.
because we did get the introduction of Kingpin. We did get Kate Bishop, who is clearly going to lead into the Young Avengers because
Yep.
that's being set up. Like Echo series is
Yep.
going to be happening. Like I felt like we may not have gotten a post-credit scene, but it's not like there's nothing we're leading up to. They just didn't spoon feed it to us, which I really appreciate. I found that
Yeah.
in phase 4, Marvel was really good, I feel like, about not talking down to its audience.
Mhm.
And I've just appreciated that pretty much all year. I think it's been fantastic.
No, it's been really good. And like, just kind of with the finale, I agree. Like overall, the finales haven't been there's definitely episodes. Like I know a lot of people are saying like, oh, episode 3 is kind of like considered to be like the best episode, I think,
Mm-hmm.
in like all the series. And I feel like with Hawkeye, it its finale was so strong. Like it tied up all the stories that it needed to tie up. It left enough questions, like with the Kingpin's like off-screen, death, which I don't believe he died at all.
Absolutely not.
No, I mean, okay, so here's the thing. You're gonna get Vincent D'Onofrio to come back and play Kingpin, and you're gonna kill him after he has like one actual episode, and you're gonna do it off screen.
Yeah.
I don't
Let
think so.
alone No Way Home. Like, please. Don't even.
No.
It's also,
No.
I think, so funny because you do see a lot of there are MCU fans who have seen Daredevil and MCU
Yes.
fans who have not seen Daredevil.
Yes.
And I think MCU fans who have seen Daredevil, no, this man is like invincible.
Yes.
But it's so
Yes.
funny to kind of watch these fans who haven't seen Daredevil. I'm like, you saw this man get blown up, hit by a car, shot with an arrow. No, he's not dead.
I know. Literally, like I feel like from the first moment that Kate like fires the first arrow and it hits him, and he just kind of like
Yeah,
whatever. Like I feel like that was the moment that Marvel was like, just so you know, he's not gonna die.
they really were like, we're gonna do everything to this guy so that you know.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it.
He's fine. He's fine. And I mean, like, so for those fans who like haven't seen Daredevil and don't know, like it's canon in the Netflix series. And I'm not actually 100% sure if it's canon in the comics, but I know in the Netflix series, which Vincent D'Onofrio was also in, his suits were made of like bulletproof material. Like
Yeah.
yeah. So and that's like a whole like plot point in like the first season, and like it's also played into in like season 3 with like that final fight scene that he like you've seen it, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yes, yeah, okay, just making sure. That in that like final fight scene between Kingpin, Bullseye, and Daredevil, that he gives his bulletproof jacket to Vanessa so that she stays safe. So
Yeah.
I'm like, if they're like picking and choosing or like just completely like accepting the Netflix series, we still have to see which one it is. Then it's like, he's fine, guys, come on.
That's, I think, the thing that's so funny right now in the MCU is you do have this multiverse, and you have the bringing in Evan Peters as Quicksilver for him to be a boner joke, but then you also have a genuine bringing in Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox, and you're like, okay, what's real?
Yes.
Like, what should I get excited about? Because like if I was just going based off of Quicksilver, because I was somebody who was very, very disappointed by that.
I was so pissed off about it.
I was so angry. So like everyone's like, oh, Kingpin. I'm like, but what are they gonna do to Kingpin? Like, yeah, I'm so thrilled with what they did, but they've truly given, like, I'm almost grateful for it. I wish it wouldn't have been Quicksilver, but I'm also grateful for this like uncertainty. Like, I have no idea what's real, what's not. I don't know what they're gonna do, which is part of that. Like, okay, well, what are they keeping from the Netflix series, and what are they not keeping from the Netflix series?
Yeah.
Like, are they gonna bring them in because they like the casting, but also do completely their own thing with them? Who knows?
I know. I mean, like, from Charlie's performance in No Way Home, there's not really a lot that you can tell from that scene, like what their plans are for.
It was
Matt
so
Murdock.
weird to see him in broad daylight.
I know.
That was the weirdest thing for me. I was like,
with like bright lighting, it wasn't like the dark, gloomy lighting of Netflix.
I was like, who is this?
I know. I mean, like, So I don't know how it was in your theater. Like my theater is like usually very quiet when I go see these the Marvel movies. But like as soon as like he slammed like his walking stick like into frame, I immediately knew, and I was like, like
pretty much. I saw it Thursday night at I live in Orlando, so our movie theater is Disney Springs.
Okay.
Which means we had a lot of cosplayers, lots of very excited people. So it was very, very, it was a really good energy, but I was still the first one to freak out. Because like some people like, you know, it's the cane, but they're also like not willing to shout yet just in case. I'm not that person.
No.
I freaked. I was like, there's no way.
It can't be anyone else, like at all. No.
If it was anybody else, it would have, I don't even know. But I was making the joke to my boyfriend that even like Endgame, I handled everything very quietly. Like I just kind of sat and I like sunk it all in, and like I just kind of like cried my own piece. Like I definitely like had my moments where I was like, but I was very quiet. So like I went into No Way Home thinking like I was gonna react the same way. Nope, had no voice the next morning. I was like, I don't know who this person is. But I guess, you know, you make it Spider-Man and all of a sudden.
Yeah. I mean, when they said that, you know, Spider-Man No Way Home was going to be like the end game of the Spider-Man movies, I was like, okay, all right. But then watching it, I was like, nope, guys, they were right. I totally get it now.
Yeah. Well, especially I'm somebody who was pretty skeptical of MCU Spider-Man up till No Way Home. Okay. It wasn't anything I ever like disliked, but I definitely had my concerns. But so like everyone's like, yeah, it's gonna be the end game of MCU Peter. I'm like, okay, but like, am I gonna care? Like, is this gonna be something that I feel like will be enough to I was an idiot. It was plenty. It was more than enough. It was fantastic.
It was very good. I will say I didn't think so. Yes and no. So the last scene in No Way Home where he's like, you know, he's swinging through and he like passes right over Rockefeller Center at Christmas time. And I was like, okay, this is very interesting that they're choosing that particular location and this particular time of year, like right when this movie's being sandwiched between episodes 5 and 6 of Hawkeye. I was like, okay, I don't think I'd be very surprised if Spider-Man showed up in Hawkeye. I did think that there was a chance that potentially Daredevil might show up like as an after credit scene or something to kind of like
that was my prediction. I thought it was going to be very, even if Spidey was in it, it was going to be like, oh, he passes over and Kate's like, is that Spider-Man? It's like, yeah, whatever. But like that's like the most I thought it would be. The only thing that like threw me from it was I felt like No Way Home seemed very early in the Christmas season,
right?
Because like Kate and like Clint seemed bundled up, like snow was on the ground, and like I felt like in No Way Home he's like walking around in a flannel. So I'm like, I don't know. But then like that ending scene, like where he goes to see MJ and Ned, I'm like, okay, he seems like a little bit more bundled up now. I don't really know what's going on there. But so many people are like, did Spider-Man just like see this in New York and like not like interact? And I'm like, hi, welcome to comics. Yeah, that's what happens. Pretty much. Like the Fantastic Four is fighting Galactus and like the Avengers are like, what's going on? Nah, we're good. You got it.
Like, no, and I mean literally like even in the MCU, like when you realize that like Eternals and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier take place like during the same week or something, and it's like it makes sense, I guess, like, you know, production wise, that you can't have it's hard to get everybody like in the same projects together, and you don't want like too much talent in one room. But at the same time, it's also just like logically it's like, okay, it's on fire. We're not going to get involved.
They're like, you got this. Like, it's fine. I don't know who you are, but you got it.
You got it. I believe in you.
I feel like, yeah, like when you've read comics like we have, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, that's how it is. Logically, doesn't make sense. No, but that's what happened.
It's fine.
Unless they're like actually invited to the party, no one shows up. That's what happened.
And yeah, and it's and I feel like that's one of the things that the MCU gets like a lot of flack for that. It's like, oh, but how come so and so hasn't shown up to like help them? Like, I know that was like a big thing for like Iron Man 3, that it was like right
Yeah.
after the Avengers, and they're like, well, how come none of the Avengers are showing up to help Iron Man? Aren't they a team now? Blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, but you know, it's kind of also like in real life, everybody's got like their own problems going on
Well, and it's also
too.
like everything doesn't need to be a team up. And I
Yes.
think that there are a lot of, at the end of the day, it's an Iron Man movie. You know,
Mhm.
do you really want another Captain America Civil War where
Right.
that's an Avengers movie? Like,
Yes. No, it is.
it's an
It is.
Avengers movie. I think, you know, sometimes we get carried away having this benefit of having this connected universe of wanting so many people to show up where you don't get, you kind of get blinded by the fact that it's supposed to be about this one character. It's something that I love so much that they did with Shang-Chi, was they were like, here's one, but that's it.
Yes.
That's it. This
Yes.
is about Sean. This is who it's about. And I really appreciated that with Hawkeye as well. I felt like they balanced introducing people like Yelena and Kingpin very well. And it was funny because I had tweeted something saying like, let's remember that this is Hawkeye's finale, not Spider-Man's. Because I just found on Twitter, like everything was about Spider-Man for Hawkeye. I'm like, this is a Hawkeye show.
Yeah.
And somebody had responded me about being like a gatekeeper for it. And I was like, I think just at the end of the day, we need to remember that like as cool as this connected universe is, it means nothing if we don't have fully fledged out characters to bring in. And I think that that's what's so important about having those solo movies and fully developing those characters is that once they are fully developed, then you're even more excited to see them when they come into something else. But you have to have those solo stories for that to matter.
No, I totally agree. Like, and also, first of all, the fact that you're called a gatekeeper just for stating the fact that it's like this is the Hawkeye finale. Like, okay.
I always say that too because I'm like, you clearly don't know that my entire brand, my entire life has been Spider-Man. So like people are like I ranked Hawkeye above Spider-Man, and they're like, oh, this is just because you hate Spider-Man. I'm like, it's a win. I'm like, in my spider plushie, I'm like, I don't know who's Spider-Man. Who is that?
Oh my gosh. No, yeah, that, oh God. Well, I'm sorry that you had to deal with it.
No, it's fine.
It's
At
like,
this point, the internet is so funny to me because I'm like, cool.
It's like, cool, thanks.
Great.
Okay, moving on. No, but
Yeah,
it's what you were saying though about how they did a really good job, because it's like, okay, yes, Elena came in and she's somebody from technically from a different franchise in the MCU, and then Kingpin came in, which is like completely different. Like we weren't even sure if like, you know, the Daredevil show was going to be canon in the MCU.
right.
And you're right, then that they found a way to place them in the show in a way that serviced Hawkeye's story rather than making it about them. Or like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Which was my biggest fear going into this last episode, having Daredevil be confirmed now, like not just Kingpin, but also quite literally Daredevil, being confirmed in No Way Home. I was like, oh no. I was like, I like had this fear that it was going to become about that and setting up Daredevil to be in the MCU, which as psyched as I am for, like there was this whole 5-episode story still. So I'm like,
Right.
we don't have the time. Or like there was just no way, I think, in my mind for that to work in coexistence. And they really did find a way. And I think that the reason Yelena worked so well is because she was fully fledged out in Black Widow. I think they call it Black Widow, but it was like a Yelena Belova movie.
Yes.
And I stand by that. But she was so fully fledged out in that movie, and they took these little moments with Yelena in the Hawkeye show that was enough not to take away from who it was about, but still really grow her character and really kind of close this huge arc for her in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, because what you were just saying made me think about how they did, you know, continue to, you know, flesh her out, but they did it in a way that while she's growing, so is Clint in a way, and Kate. But right now, just specifically thinking about Clint, like they're both grieving the loss of Natasha, and the way that they executed that scene where they kind of can both, you know, I feel like that last scene with them together, like they both kind of reach like the acceptance stage of grief. Like they're both going through this journey in like a very different way and from very different perspectives. Clint is a lot about like survivor's guilt on top of losing his best friend, where Yelena is coming from a point of like kind of almost like rage grief.
Yeah, just
and
anger. Yeah,
just anger that losing her sister. And they both, in a way, I think, like help each other come to terms with Natasha's death.
Yeah, I think that's why it worked so well, is that they made them need each other to come to that closure. Yep. Which involves Clint on both factors, because he needs to help Yelena, but also needs Yelena to help him, which keeps it about him.
Yep.
Which is why it worked for the show and didn't take away from that, let alone the fact that we finally get some sort of circumstantial like closure for Nat with these two people who probably loved her more than anybody else did. I think the only person that they probably could have thrown into that trio was Steve Rogers, but even still, kind of, maybe. I only say that because I feel like we saw Steve and Nat interact more than we ever saw Clint and Nat interact. But you have these two people who like clearly were her two people, like they were her people. And to have that still be able to be focused on Hawkeye while still giving them that closure, I think was like so well done.
It really was. It's also like, it kind of, like you were saying before, like fixes like the previous misconceptions we might have had about like the Clint and Natasha relationship, because it's true, we really don't see them on screen together a lot. Like it's, if anything, like the Natasha friendship that we were presented with the most was with Steve. So
which is so wild to me.
I know. So wild. I know. I mean,
I loved it, but also like wild.
No, I agree. Like kind of slightly off topic here, but like when I realized that originally Natasha's storyline was supposed to go to Sharon Carter in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, but instead they made it about Natasha, I was like, oh, okay. Like, it just,
I guess this track.
Yeah, it's like, I get it. Like, you want to make it more about Avengers, I guess, but I don't know. I also, really did love the dynamic
just makes
that they
me
had.
More mad about how dirty they did Natasha.
Oh no, yes,
because that wasn't even for her.
Absolutely. Anyway, going back to Hawkeye. But yeah, just establishing that, because I know a lot of fans were like, oh, this is clearly like giving Natasha like a family, her with Yelena and everything. This is clearly just like Marvel trying to like retcon everything. But then when they go back and have Clint say, he knew who Yelena was, like he never had seen her personally, but he knew her name, and Natasha had spoken to him about her like all the time. Like it kind of fixes, kind of the missing pieces that we had before.
It made you believe that they were friends.
Yes.
Like there was that friendship that we just didn't get to see, unfortunately, for 10 years.
Yeah.
So to have that kind of be confirmed like so easily, like that was like, that's all you needed to do to make us believe it. Why didn't it happen so much earlier?
I don't know. I think Matt Fraction, who is one of the consulting producers for the series, as he should be, God bless, because he really swooped in and saved the day for this character.
He really did. I mean, and honestly, that's what puts, for me personally, Hawkeye above No Way Home, is that so clear comic connection and bringing in that comic element with the actual writer that may be controversial, but put Hawkeye on the map for modern audiences and readers. Just completely like blew my mind, because it's something that we haven't seen Marvel do. Like there has not been something this close to a comic representation in the MCU until Hawkeye, and it just blew me away. I was so happy about it.
And it's funny that you say that too, because of all the things that they tried their very best to like make it, comic accurate. I find it very interesting that it was like also one of like the most grounded superheroes that they have, like the most grounded Avenger. Because it's like, okay, yeah, Natasha didn't have superpowers either, but she was like, this like larger than life spy
Right.
assassin, like,
Yeah.
but when you look at Clint in the comics, especially the Matt Fraction comics, he's very down to earth, he's like band-aid and bruised all the time. And
Yeah.
he's really just there trying his best. And that was something that was always missing from him in the MCU. And, the show just really drove it home, like how much like it's especially like in the second episode where he's just like so done with everything, and then he has to like go to the LARP event. He's just like
Yes.
so over it. And in every episode he's like always cut and has bandages on his face and everything. Like they really just made him feel real in a sense.
And I think it's something that the MCU needed in general, because everything has been something of national, of global, of cosmic proportions. And like these stakes were so incredibly high that to have this story centered around an Avenger who did handle things like cosmic beings, now just in New York on the ground fighting the good fight, is just, I think, so needed in the MCU, because it does bring it back down to earth. It does bring it back down to being able to tell these like even newer stories now with Daredevil and She-Hulk and these ground level characters, which personally are my favorite types of characters.
Yeah.
And like even No Way Home, bringing it back down to friendly neighborhood Spider-Man instead of this Spider-Man who's out in space fighting whatever.
Yeah.
I think Marvel really needed this show to kind of bring us back down to that level, to introduce these characters that are so incredibly popular. And I think a lot of it for those reasons is because they feel real.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And it raises the question for me, like how they'll approach Young Avengers, like, because it just having, because Kate, obviously, she's still very grounded. She hasn't really experienced any of the stuff that Clint has. And depending on who they decide to bring in and at what point, like, are they going to shift from like a grounded level team to a more, cosmic level thing? Are they going to just kind of keep it very, like, I'm just curious to see like what the balance will be once we finally get Young Avengers.
The Young Avengers specifically, when you look at the lineup, there are very few characters who are ground level like Kate, just like Clint in the Avengers. Because so far we have confirmed definitely America, who dimension hops,
right?
Not ground level. Wiccan and Speed, who are definitely not. That's very much chaos magic.
Yes.
Not even gonna mess with that. The only other one I can really think of that could somewhat be more ground level are going to be Cassie Stature and Elias Patriot. But even Elias Patriot gets super soldier serum, which essentially is a superpower. And Cassie also superpower. Yes. So like you have like kind of that thing where, yeah, the Avengers are so cosmic, but we look at the Young Avengers as if they're more ground level, I think because they're younger, but also they're not. Like, yeah, when you really look at the lineup, they're dealing with smaller villains, I think, because they are I don't want to say an unofficial team, but even in the comics, I mean, they're barely official. Like the Avengers like barely tolerate them.
They're like the junior varsity team.
Yeah, the only one who's really like, you go guys, is like Hawkeye.
Yeah.
It's the only one who's like, who cares? They're kids, let them have it. So it's really interesting that the one that we have the most developed out of all of them is the only grounded character on that team. Yeah. And that could be until Multiverse of Madness, but we don't even know when we're seeing Billy and Tommy next. My hope is Multiverse of Madness, and I hope that they're going to get aged up to be on this team. Right. But aside from that, we've gotten nothing from Eli. We're not getting Stature till Quantumania. So you have this like huge team that you know is getting set up, like it's happening, and the only one who is developed enough is Kate. Yeah. Who is the only grounded character, but also leads the team in some iterations. So it's kind of crazy because, like, can you ever, like, I always feel like it's kind of crazy to ever think of Clint leading the Avengers. He
Right.
leads the West Coast Avengers, but like actually leading the Avengers is kind of like nuts to me. Like, I'm like, that doesn't happen. What do you mean? So for them to be setting up Kate like this, you're right. Like, where do you go?
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah. I know. I know. And I'm like, I highly doubt that they're gonna put anyone else, even if she is like the most grounded character, that they're gonna put anyone else besides her to like be like the leader of the Young Avengers, just because they took the time to develop her, introduce, like fully flesh her out and like introduce her in this series. And it makes me wonder, like, with her partnership with Hawkeye and how he does, his perspective on the Young Avengers in the comics, if he'll be like the unofficial mentor to all of them.
Yeah. I
How
feel like
that'll
it's
all.
definitely how he's at least written in like West Coast Avengers, which
Mhm.
is, I feel like, kind of where they're more going with the Young Avengers team, is going to be more West Coast Avengers type.
Mhm.
But I mean, that's my hope, especially because, I mean, obviously Jeremy Renner is not as young as he once was. Like, it's
Right.
been 12 years since he's
Yeah.
um and having the rest of these original six done. I mean, even we have Bruce Banner, who's most likely passing on his mantle. We have
Yes.
Thor, who's probably passing on his mantle.
Mhm.
But to have a way for him to actually keep involved in the MCU would be great, especially when we just got this fully developed version of him.
Yeah. It's like
So
Marvel
please
finally
don't
gives
take him
us.
away.
Exactly. It's like, oh, okay, so we've heard your concerns over the years. So here's comic accurate Clint's, and that's all you're gonna get. Enjoy.
And that's it. You're done.
Yeah,
That's what I'm so
you're done.
nervous about for She-Hulk, is that they're going to give me like a Bruce Banner that I actually like, and they're going to be like,
Mhm.
man, he's gone. And I'm going to be like,
Yeah.
what? We just got him. What do you
It's like,
mean?
no, bring him back, please.
We
Yeah,
missed him this whole time.
and that just goes back to what we've been saying about phase 4 just kind of fixing all the issues we've had previously with the MCU. They're really, I feel like, I don't know if it's that they got like fresh blood coming in, or if they're like actually talking more to like comic book writers or whatever, but it feels like they're taking like a much different approach to essentially approaching these characters, whether they're
Yeah,
new or they've existed for a while. Like they're, and I think part of that also has to do with the television format, that they have more hours in a shorter amount of time to like explore these characters. That's definitely part of it.
absolutely.
But it just feels like it just feels so different than anything that we've really seen before in the
Yeah.
MCU.
It might be a controversial take, but I genuinely feel like this is like the Marvel we've all been like building for, like waiting for. Like, this is like the prime, it feels like the prime phase. Because I think my theory at least is that they had all of the Infinity Saga to learn. Well, the
Right.
problem is that they were trapped in this Infinity Saga, that everything had to lead up to Endgame. So
Mhm.
anything that they learned, they weren't necessarily able to apply until they hit that reset button, which they did after Endgame. And now we're getting this, I mean, but like incredible material that we've gotten this year that has to be, I mean, I think every single movie that came out this year, aside from Black Widow, broke my top 10 in my MCU
Wow.
rankings. Like,
Wow.
I mean, Shang-Chi and No Way Home are both 1 and 2 for
There you go.
movies. Like,
Yeah.
it just, this year just blew away content, blew away representation, and actually
Mhm.
like telling stories that I don't feel like were in the Marvel format. Um,
Right.
and don't get me wrong, I definitely feel like we did get things that were very formatted. Things like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I felt very MCU.
Yeah.
But they've done so much to break out of it, and I think that they were finally able to apply everything that they had learned over the Infinity Saga, and it is paying off for sure.
It's funny that you mentioned how the Falcon and the Winter Soldier felt more like previous MCU than the other projects, especially when you think about how that was actually the show that was supposed to come out first. But then when COVID happened, like the
Yeah,
whole lineup got switched up. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that. And it makes me think again, like, okay, did something
I
happen
feel like it
behind
was
the scenes?
actually,
Go ahead.
I feel like it was made to transition us over.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, I feel like it was
Yeah.
made to be like, because it did kind of deteriorate off of it, but it still like was comfortable. It was in that comfy Marvel setting
Yeah.
before they fed us like WandaVision, which was like, what is this? But instead, I loved how it turned out. They just threw us into there and we were like, we have no idea what's going on. It's
It's like,
great.
what is
But we have
happening?
no idea what's happening.
It's like, hold on,
I
wait,
felt
I'm
like
so
there was
confused.
supposed to be like this transition show.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I feel like there was supposed to be this transition show, which I do feel like, again, like that kind of felt like very MCU-y, but also started deteriorating. And then I felt like WandaVision was like very, very different and then kind of fell back into the MCU
Yeah.
format at the end, but still was giving us that transition, was like, okay, this is really weird, but we're gonna bring back the comfort a little bit until we throw you back into Lucky. Like,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
it's weird again. But I loved it. It was great. Everything just felt so Marvel this year. Like, everything really just like, I feel like they really, like, I felt like, you know, we really thought that Infinity War and Endgame was like, this is it. This is what Marvel is. And they really
Right.
just like flipped the narrative on us this year and was like, oh, but we can do so much more.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy.
No, it's true. I
It's
mean,
been so incredible.
when you think about how the year started with WandaVision and like this, and the thing is, it's so hard to compare WandaVision to anything else because it's just so unique with like how they do like the sitcom from like, they take inspiration from like earlier decades, but then still have it be Marvel, but still have it be kind of this like family friendly story, but then also you have like the darker undertones and everything. And then they end the
Mm-hmm.
year with Hawkeye, which essentially is just like, it's Christmas and we're gonna mess some sugar honey iced tea up.
That's, I
um
think, the craziest thing is, yeah,
yeah,
is
it's
that of all the things to end on, like,
yeah.
because it doesn't, I don't necessarily think that this is the end of phase 4.
No.
I keep having to remind myself that it doesn't go by year. Like, we have never gotten this much Marvel content in a year. Like,
Yeah.
so like it feels
Yeah.
like phase 4 is kind of like ending because it's the end of the year, but at the same time it's not. Like, there's so much
Right.
more can fit into phase 4. It's
Yeah.
not just because it's the end of the year. But to like have something that is so grounded and so real after things like the Eternals and
Yes.
even things like Shang-Chi, which completely introduced a different type of magic into the MCU.
Yeah.
WandaVision, which definitely included a different type of magic into the MCU. Just was really like, how do I put this? It showed every layer to Marvel of what we were going to get. And I think that that's why it feels so much like the comic books right now, is because that's how it's always been in comics.
Yeah.
Is you have these like different levels of what's going on. I've made videos about it before where there's like, you have like the ground level heroes, and then you have like the Fantastic Four who are celebrities, and then you have like the Avengers and the mutants, and like it's layers.
Mm-hmm.
And to now, instead of having like this one sheet, we do have like this entire book now. There's so many more chapters to Marvel, and to like not have just a white sheet of paper in front of us just feels so surreal and so cool. And I'm just beyond excited.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be, because absolutely phase 4 is not nowhere near close to being over yet, and the rest
Yeah.
of it's definitely going to be a wild ride. I mean, if you think about it, like phase 4 goes all the way to Quantumania. There's still a
Yeah.
bunch of movies from now until then, and not to mention the
Oh, I'm
countless
exhausted.
shows that we're still waiting for on Disney
And like,
Plus.
just alone what's been introduced this year, my brain's not ready. like we're gonna need to start spreading things out, or I'm going to explode.
Yes.
Because especially, I mean, with the rumors of Multiverse of Madness, I mean, they're saying like it makes No Way Home look like nothing. So like, I was talking to my boyfriend about it like 2 days ago. We were like, we're expecting like Ben Affleck Daredevil. Like all bets are off at this point. Like everything.
Yeah.
Like, is Jennifer Garner Elektra gonna be?
I mean, that would be something. That would certainly be something.
But we are definitely like, all bets are. I keep wanting to say we're in the end game now, but we're not. This is the beginning. This is like, I keep saying it, but like truly, all bets are off. Like,
yeah, it's
good
true.
luck guessing, because who knows.
And I feel like that's why it's so good that they ended this year with Hawkeye, with like, the ground level, because it gives us time, and I said this before, but it gives us a chance to kind of like catch our breath and not like, because especially depending whether or not we get another show on Disney Plus between now and when Multiverse of Madness comes out. If that doesn't happen, then Hawkeye episode 6 was the last thing that we are going to see before Multiverse of Madness comes out. And to go from like that ground level to like the insanity that this movie is going to be, I feel like Marvel knows what they're doing. They have they always, Kevin Feige says it, we have a plan. And just the amount of time in between, I feel like is perfect for fans, because it'll leave us with more anticipation, I feel like, for this movie. And
which is why I love that there was no post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Like, it only adds to like I'm like, there's a reason. There's a reason there was no post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Like you said, Kevin knows. Kevin knows under his little hat.
his little cap.
Secrets under there.
That's why he always wears a cap, to keep the secrets in.
Just reminded me of like Mean Girls. That's why his hat's always on. It's full of secrets.
Yes.
But it's true.
I mean,
but so I actually feel like the fact that there wasn't a post-credit scene says so much, because I'm a firm believer that I do think, and I think they should have started this with No Way Home. Marvel is at a point of popularity where they don't need trailers.
Okay, like 100%. So I don't know if you saw this, but I posted a TikTok before the first Spider-Man No Way Home trailer came out, and I was like, with like the amount of interest and excitement for this movie, you guys don't need a trailer, but if you do play a trailer, what would be fantastic is, and then it's like the green, like what it says, like the rating, or like this film is not yet rated thing, but then it immediately goes into Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up.
Yes. Yeah, period. End story.
That's it. That's the trailer.
Yeah.
Like, because it's
like,
you're so right.
Teaser trailer, and then that's it. I don't want to know anything else, because I do think, as much as I did love No Way Home, I mean, was I surprised?
Yeah.
Not
exactly.
Really. Not really. Yeah. Was I really happy? Yes. Was I surprised? No. And I want to be surprised.
Yeah.
I want that.
Like, I was talking to Jess, aka Female Peter Parker, about this. Like, you're excited when you see, Toby and Andrew and Charlie on screen, but it's more like a relieved excited. It's not like a surprised excited. And it's like, I want to be surprised when I see these things, and Marvel kind of has a history of doing this, unfortunately, where they'll reveal a character's cameo in the trailers. Like, they did
and you're
that.
Like, I don't want to know.
It's like, imagine how much more fun this could have been for all of us if we were totally taken by surprise by this.
Literally having known, like, it almost makes me angry when I think about the fact that I could have gone into that movie really knowing nothing and imagining my reaction then.
Yeah.
Like, it almost makes me angry. Like, that was taken from us.
Yeah.
That, like, ability to have that reaction was stolen away. And people are already theorizing. Like, it's hard because I'm always like, yeah, fans should like theorize, but also shut don't want to hear it.
It's like theorize, but like let's like not spread leaks. How about that? Like, we can theorize, but let's not spread the leaks around. Let's plug those leaks.
Exactly, because I'm also a person that was like, people were like, I want, I don't know, Bumblebee, the Transformer, to show up in this movie. I'm like, you go on with your bad self. Go for it. Dream big, buddy. And those are like almost my favorite ones because
Yeah.
Bumblebee did show up. But,
Like the
happy
posters
movie.
that people were making of like all these random characters being like everybody who's going to show up in Spider-Man No
Yes.
Way Home, and it's like Batman, Chewbacca.
Yeah. Those are the
Bumblebee.
series I want to see, not
Yes.
something that's actually going to inhibit my viewing of the movie. Because just imagining, like, it's cool when our theories are right, and it's great, and it's one of those things that you can't help but think about. Like, my biggest theory throughout all of Hawkeye, and I'm still sticking with it, is that Eleanor is going to be Madame Mask.
Okay.
That's my big one.
I like that.
She works for her in the comics, so I'm like, she kind of seems, she's like talking to Kingpin like face to face, like she has that power. Yeah. So I'm like, I really think that's like my big one. Well, you can't help it. You're gonna theorize, especially when you have this background and stuff. But just the idea of going into something so blind, just like, I'm so jealous. Like, if anybody got to do that, I'm like, that must have been awesome. Yeah. But I'm like, okay, you've released the Multiverse of Madness trailer. Now stop it. I don't want to see anything else.
We don't want any more content. Like, you gave us plenty. Like, we're good.
The only person that I want to see at the premiere is Kevin Feige and Benedict Cumberbatch. That's it.
That's it. That's it.
Like, I keep thinking about how cool it would have been for us to not know that Wanda was in it.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been so cool. But also, I mean, because it's hard, because I'm also like, okay, well, you need trailers to get people into the movie. But at this point, does Marvel? Like, we're all gonna see it nonetheless. Like, things for like solo movies, like I think Shang-Chi and Eternals, and things where you're like truly introducing a new character.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But when I think about things like Endgame, where they were literally editing characters into scenes, I'm like, where did that energy go?
Right.
Where did that energy go? I could see Lizard's face getting kicked, Marvel.
Yeah, I know. That was so bad. I know
you're slicker than that.
That was so bad.
My boyfriend pointed out that on like one of the scenes where Tom is swinging through, they forgot to change the eyes on the mask. Now, he knows this because he's insane and like has like all of the masks and all the face shells or whatever. Something I never would have noticed. But he's like, look, it's Andrew's eyes. I'm like, why would you show me that? Like, don't tell me.
Oh my God.
I know Marvel's slicker than this when they were editing Thor to look hot in Endgame. And then we got there, like, I know.
Yeah.
If that Thor can be kept a secret, why can't the rest of everything? I just want to know.
It's an excellent point, though.
Really I'm like, I know you all are slicker than this. What happened?
No, it's true. And like, just thinking about like the lengths that they'll go to keep secrets. Like, I was reading this article about how for like, for Vincent D'Onofrio, keeping his presence a secret, they would like essentially put like this huge like tent thing over him and like walk him to set to try to like prevent anybody from getting a picture out of him being in the show, of him and his stunt doubles. So it's like, okay, we know Marvel is capable of like completely blindsiding us if they really wanted to.
So like, how are these leaks getting out?
I know. And part of it, I'm like positive that there's a percentage of it that's like planned by like their PR team. But I'm also like,
I completely agree. Anytime
it.
that Tom Holland has spoiled something. Okay, Marvel.
I feel like in the beginning he genuinely did spoil, and then Marvel decided to exploit that even further.
I feel like he did one time, and then the internet blew up, and we're like,
it's like, ooh, here's an idea.
What else can we do with this? I think the only person I remember watching the Eternals press interviews, and like Angelina Jolie would just like say something and everyone's like, I'm like, that's real, because there's no way nobody's telling Angelina Jolie to stop saying something.
That's true.
It's Angelina Jolie. Tom, on the other hand, on the other hand, it's like, dude.
It's like, dude,
But like
come
that
on.
like poster reveal for, was it
Oh,
Endgame or Infinity War? And I was
think
like,
yeah, I was like, that's so planned. That's so
a lot.
planned.
Okay,
It's like, sure,
okay, Tom.
sure, Tom.
It's okay because it's you, but also okay.
Well, then also like it made me think of that one interview where somebody asked Haley if there's gonna be Young Avengers, and she immediately goes to Kevin Feige like
I'm like, Haley, that was an answer.
like,
That was an answer.
the thing is like Kevin Feige just looks at her like shut up, turn around.
I'm like, okay, that was my favorite one is it Jeremy Renner on Jimmy Fallon?
Yes.
And they were asking about Yelena. He's like, yeah, who's that?
Who?
I don't
What?
I don't
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm like, that's it. That's how you handle it, period. Done. That's how you don't get fired.
Yeah.
Just deny at all costs. I think Haley did it with Spider-Man too. She was like, yeah, that'd be super cool.
Yeah.
What about it?
And then you have Andrew Garfield, who's like for the last several months has been fighting for his life.
Poor man. I was like on Twitter, I'm like, it's okay. They're so mean to you. Don't let them do this.
And it's funny because like in the end, it turns out, he was really in the movie. And so he's like, just actively trying so hard to lie and hide it. I know.
It must have been so frustrating. Oh, that poor man.
I mean, honestly, he's probably thinking like, I am never getting involved with another movie that comes out at like the same time a Marvel project comes out. Like,
I think about that happening all the time with like these people that are getting pulled in from whether it's the past Spider-Man movies or it's the Netflix shows. Like they have never had to deal with something like this.
Yeah.
Something so secretive and so huge. Like thinking about like the interviews with like Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe. I'm like, how are you guys feeling? Like you guys can't like this is not like when you were interviewing for Toby's and everybody was like actually asking you about like what was it like working on set? No, we're all trying to get answers, buddy. Like
we want answers.
Like what did it feel like? Like how was that so different for like all of these people? And now with Vincent D'Onofrio, who will be able to now do press and like as much like Daredevil didn't like need to do press. Like there were there were really no spoilers in Daredevil. Like
it's like they went to Comic-Con. For real. Like they went to Comic-Con a couple of times, I think, but it's not, it wasn't the same level as like
something this massive and people and interviewers willing to do so much to get those answers.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's freaking wild out here. I'm like, give them a break.
Vultures, all of them.
Oh my God. I feel so bad all the time. I'm like, this guy's okay. Like blink twice if you need help.
Blink 3 times if Kevin Feige's behind the camera threatening you.
Yeah, honestly, like all those memes of like Tom Holland right now, like saying that like he's not gonna like be Spider-Man or whatever, he doesn't want to, or whatever's going on right now. It's just like Kevin Feige like, hey, what did you say?
What'd you say? What?
What was that? That's just how I picture Kevin Feige all the time.
Yes.
Kevin Feige must be the most exhausted man in the world.
He really must be. He really must be. He probably misses the days when it was just like the original 6 Avengers, and that's all he had to keep track of. Oh man.
Big oof for the big Kev. Proud of him.
He's doing the Lord's work. He's out there. He's working real hard, and
but
I
thanks
appreciate
for Hawkeye, man. Like I appreciate it.
Exactly.
Thanks for Hawkeye and giving us something. So grounded and great.
Yeah. If you want to give us
so much joy.
I know. If you want to like give us a season 2, we're not going to say no.
Yeah, I don't know. Even just like a will return note at the end. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be fine.
Something.
I'm like, I don't even need a post-credit scene. I don't even need it. All I want is the Hawkeyes will return.
No, but I feel like we can feel assured knowing that they will definitely come back. I mean,
in some
just
way they have to,
they
for
have
sure.
to. I mean, even if it's not a season 2, if it's just, in different projects, I feel like the audience reception for this show is definitely, it's probably like the best received show since WandaVision from what I've been seeing online. Like I feel like people like really
Yeah,
did
I
enjoy
think
the
just because
show.
there isn't so much. And I mean, I think even with like WandaVision, obviously WandaVision's popularity is pretty much unmatched.
Yeah.
Nothing has matched WandaVision's popularity aside from maybe Far From Home or No Way Home.
Right.
But there was also still that controversy at the end of WandaVision of if people liked the finale or not, or if they were disappointed by their theories or not, as where I feel like Hawkeye has been just this consistent joy. Like people have consistently liked it every episode. There hasn't been an episode where they're like, that was weak. Like it's just been consistent. It may not be like the biggest like Marvel project, but it stayed the same. And I think that's what people are appreciating so much about it, is that it knew what it was, it stuck to it, and it did it really well. And I think that's the most you can ask for something.
Absolutely. It was strong every single episode. I agree. There wasn't a single episode that like disappointed in any shape or form. And it definitely it'll be interesting to see how the next round of like Emmys and award shows go, like if they're gonna pursue anything with
no
Hawkeye.
idea how they're handling this.
Yeah, because it honestly it definitely is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, Disney Plus show that Marvel's done, just because from start to finish, like it was just solid. There was no weak spots. And I also feel like part of the thing with WandaVision and its popularity was all of the theories, and that's not what Hawkeye was. So it didn't really suffer from any of that, disappointment or like people feeling like they were misled or anything. Like you were saying. And it's, I mean, and the fact, I feel like anything that's like based Christmas time is also just going to be like just so much fun for everybody to watch. Like
accurate. And I also love that I'm a Jewish creator who does celebrate Christmas, but like I also really respected the fact that it wasn't like, this is Christmas.
Yeah.
Hang up your Christmas tree. Like it was very appropriate for the content that it was. Like I felt like they mixed that superhero medium with the Christmas medium so well. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. No, it was great. And I feel like if they do pursue another season, it should be like, I feel like each new season, if they do that, should be like a different holiday. So like if season 2 is like a Halloween themed season.
Right. I would love that. I just want to see what they dress up as.
Exactly.
I just want to know.
Exactly, like what they can do like with the LARPers and their costumes, and like I just want to see Lucky.
Back. They were heroes.
They really were. They remind me a little bit of the 3 wombats in Ant-Man, in the Ant-Man movie.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Perfect analogy. I mean, honestly, there were just so many characters in this show that I was just like, oh my god, I love them. Like and Jack. In the show, I feel like, I mean, I was pretty much waiting for him to be like bad guy swordsman, because like I think a lot of people were like, you were sus, and I'm like, okay, but I've read the comics, like this guy's a bad guy. Like, I was just waiting, and then he was just himbo, and I was like, oh my god, I love him.
Yes.
Like I started getting suspicious when like Hawkeye didn't recognize him, because like in the comics the 2 like partially trained him, so I'm like sitting there waiting for like Clint to be like, I know you, but he never did. But I really like the direction that they went with him. I thought that was like really fun. And then you had like girls and like all of these like LARPer characters, like they let alone the Yelena and the Echoes and the Kingpin, like they treated the other characters so great, and they were so much fun and such great additions to the show that I think were opportunities that could have been wasted, and they didn't. And I think that was really special.
Yeah. No, going back to what we were saying, like, oh yes, Lucky, 100% Lucky.
Lucky.
But going back to what we were saying about how there wasn't a character that like undermined or took away from Clint and Kate's story. Like everybody who was in this show was there to serve their storylines and help push them forward into their their growth. And yeah, there's just no wasted potential. They didn't push anything and like any character, any storyline too far. Is just so well executed from start to finish, and I'm really sad that it's over.
Yeah, it went by so fast. I think though dropping those first 2 episodes right there at the beginning just made it go by like, I'm like, where'd it go? Because like I keep saying like, oh, it's like only 6 episodes, and my boyfriend was like, yeah, but so is like Falcon the Winter Soldier, and I was like, Falcon the Winter Soldier felt so long.
It did.
In comparison to Hawkeye. And I don't know if it was just because the tones of the show, like the tones of Falcon and Winter Soldier were of course much heavier.
Right.
But yeah, I was just like, that was the same amount, but one feels like I'll watch episode 3. I rewatch every week. I like rewatch them like 4 times before the next episode came out. I was in love with the show. But like episode 3, remember, like I felt like I would like go to do something while the show was playing. I come back and it was over. It's like a 40-minute episode, but like it's so high paced and it's so fun that it just goes by like the speed of lightning, and you're just like, I want more. What happened? Like it felt like it was supposed to be so much content, because we keep saying like, or you keep saying, you have this TV series where you have so much more time, but this show just felt like movie length.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing in a way, because it was just that good, but also you're like, oh, when's the next one? Oh, where's more?
We need more.
I'm not ready for it to be end. Like I thought this was going to carry me so much longer, especially because this was definitely my highlight for the year. This was the thing I was looking forward to the most.
Yeah.
And now it's gone. Like already in the blink of an eye. I'm like, I was like expecting to enjoy this a lot longer. But we also had the drop of possibly one of the biggest MCU movies in the middle of it too, which I also think played a part in it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Yeah, it's I it definitely, like, I feel like December just having, because we've had other months this year where we've had like a movie and a show coming out at the same time, but I feel like just with how great Hawkeye is, or how great the Hawkeye show was, and this huge movie No Way Home coming out, I feel like December just definitely felt just so much quicker, and that's part like everything just felt like so much quicker. Yeah the season just
at the time of we're recording this, literally Christmas is in 2 days. I'm like, what? Where did the entire year go?
Yes.
Where'd it go? I just want to know. But like honestly, like once November hit, it was just like speed. I was like, all of a sudden we have all this new content. Like my boyfriend and I were invited to a early screening of The Matrix Resurrections. Nice. And it was just so funny there, because we've been so involved in everything Marvel. I was like, what do you mean you want me to watch The Matrix? I was like, is Tom Holland in this? Is the past Matrix people gonna show up? This is a multiverse thing. Like, mind you, I've never seen the first 3 Matrix, so I really had no idea what was going on. Loved the movie though; it was really fun. But I'm like, oh, what do you mean you want me to like pause thinking about? And it was literally Tuesday night, so it's like before the finale of Hawkeye is coming out. So I'm like, it's just been so funny because these months of just every week something Marvel. You've been so in this Marvel bubble. Like I've seen so many creators who are like film creators or book creators or whatever it is. You can't talk about anything else because there's so much Marvel happening. You're like, okay, well, if I miss it, and it's so funny to just be in this bubble, and I love it, and I never want to leave.
I know.
And now I have to for a couple of months, and I'm like, what is out there in the world? Like, what do you mean?
I know.
The Batman. What?
It's like, Uncharted, Tom Holland's in that.
Yeah.
Although I am excited about that movie, but
he's a variant. Exactly. Like there's all these movies, but it is funny to like have been in this bubble and now to have such a break from it. It's refreshing, but also you're like, oh, what do I do now? What do I do?
Yeah.
Like I used to be like a DC. Yeah. Outside of Spider-Man, I used to be mostly a DC creator. Marvel said, "Oh, 2021, that will not be an option. You will have one personality, and it will be Marvel." But I am excited for those doors to kind of open back up and to get excited about things like the Batman and Uncharted and all of these new movies coming out. But it is crazy that just we've gotten so much, and it's all been, even having my complaints about some of this stuff, it's been a dream, like, to have this much like superhero content, like, as somebody who grew up really loving the comics and the secret, and never in my mind did I think that we'd get this much superhero content.
No.
You know, you always talk about like, oh, this person should have a movie, or this person should have a movie, and you're like, yeah, they should all have movies, but like, how much realistic? Now we live in a world where all of these people can have their own movies.
Yep.
Like, it's kind of crazy, because I've always been an advocate for like the X-Men, and like you're like, oh yeah, they should all have their own movies, and you're like, that will never happen. Yeah, we got like 6 movies this year, so let's make it happen. We can do it.
Yes.
It's just crazy to be living in a world with so much.
Yeah, I know, so much content, and it's
like,
it's honestly, it's like
crazy.
2012 me seeing the Avengers could never have imagined a world where like Hawkeye would have his own TV show, and it would be like one of my favorite TV shows, one of my favorite content pieces that Marvel released in an entire year. And it's, you know, it's very exciting to see, you know, not only the direction
to have
Marvel's
4
going.
movies come out in a year alone.
I know. Yeah.
I'm like, I keep forgetting. I'm like, that was like this year. Like, WandaVision was this year.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. Sometimes I'm just like,
yeah, we're almost on the 1 year anniversary.
Because it feels like so much has happened from it that it's just like, wow, we fit all that in.
Yeah.
It's been crazy.
Marvel said, all right, you want to see some real speed?
They said, oh, you guys want content. Like, we can make that happen. It was funny though to see a post from a little while ago. I was like going through like some really old like stories in my archive on Instagram, and I had posted like a schedule for the movies coming up, and it was like Black Widow was supposed to be released last year.
Yeah.
And like all these things that were supposed to be like last year, and it's crazy to think how much we've gotten this year when really it was supposed to be, and like who knows what we would have gotten this year or next year, and you're just like, like how much more content we would have been exposed to by now.
Yeah.
Having given our past 2 years or whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, we think it's a lot now.
I know. I know. And I do feel like, again, Hawkeye was like the perfect note to end this year on, because it's so grounded. Absolutely. And because it's not only introducing a new character, but it's like based on a character that we've known for like, you know, the last 12 years or so. And
for sure,
you know, writing him and presenting him in a way that like fans can actually appreciate. It's just, I feel like, and you were saying this before, like, you know, this isn't, the phase 4 is really only just begun. Like, we still have a lot to go. And I feel like if I had to pick like a halftime show, so to speak, I feel like Hawkeye was like perfect to like get us ready. That's
exactly what this feels like. And it was such good timing, and it was just such a solid, consistently enjoyable show to watch and to kind of leave this break on.
And that's it for this episode of the Fandom Report. Thank you all so much for joining and watching / listening to us. Thank you so much, Jensen, for joining. You guys, if you're not following her on Instagram or TikTok, make sure you do, especially for you Hawkeye fans, for you Spidey fans. Like, her content is so enjoyable to watch. She's JensenAvenger, and I will link her socials in the description box down below. Jensen, do you have any last minute comments, thoughts, anything that you want to share before we sign off?
Just thank you so much for having me, and that I hope everyone has enjoyed this amazing, incredible year of content that we've gotten. Has a very happy holidays and end of the year, and I'm just really looking forward to 2022. And
thank you again for joining. And yes, everybody have a happy holiday, a happy new year, and we will see you in 2022. Bye, guys.
Yay, bye. Thank you.
Thank you.